So the first one, number 19, it says a meteorologist measures the angle of elevation of a weather balloon as 41 degrees. So you want to set up a picture. Okay, so here's your meteorologist. He's on the ground. And then you have a weather. Oh, sorry, I didn't switch over. Thank you for telling me that. Sometimes people wait until I've done the whole problem and then they tell me that. That's frustrating. Okay. So we're going to say it looks something like this. So it says the angle of elevation of a weather balloon, because it doesn't say anything about his eye level and how high that is, that just means he did it from the ground. So the angle of elevation, here's your horizontal line. The angle of elevation is going to be this one. Okay. And it says it indicated it is 1,503 meters from his location. So the balloon to his location is 1,503 meters. The question is, to the nearest meter, how high above the ground is the balloon? So what we're trying to find is this height. Okay, so here's your triangle. Okay, now here's what you're gonna have to do on your quiz. Are you ready? You take that information and you set it up using trig. So first thing, where do you start? Always from the angle. So we're gonna start from right here at the 41, and we're gonna figure out what two sides do we have. This would be called the opposite. This one is the hypotenuse. So which trig function uses opposite and hypotenuse? Right? It's the SO part of SOHCAHTOA, opposite over hypotenuse. So we're going to say the sine, what always comes after the trig function? The angle. So it's going to be the sine of 41 equals x over 1503. And then to solve it, you would just multiply by 1503. So this is what you're going to plug into your calculator. 1503 sine 41. And that would be the height, which I think was 986 meters. So this should come out to 986 when you plug it in. If you plug that in right now and you're not getting that, talk to me, because we don't want you to get them wrong just because you don't know how to plug it into the calculator, okay? Any questions on that? Okay, number 21. Look at what you're given here. Okay, so they give you, this would be what kind of angle?
A depressed.
Depression, right? From the horizontal line, go down. I love that you're so excited about that. I really do. Okay, so what happens here, you have a couple options. You could find this angle. How would you find that angle? That one's not the alternate interior. Subtract from 90, right? Or what most people do, I feel like, is find this one, which is also going to be 18, because those are alternate interiors. So if you take the alternate interior there, if we're going to set this up from the angle, which two sides do you have? This one's opposite. This one's adjacent, right? The hypotenuse is the one that's always across from the 90. We don't have that one. So opposite and adjacent is which trig function? Tangent. Opposite over adjacent. So you're going to say the tangent of the angle equals the opposite, which is x, over the adjacent, which is 2. And then how do you solve that?
You multiply by 2.
Multiply by 2. So you would plug this into your calculator. This is 1. So 2 tan 18. Oh, yeah. So 0.64983 is what you get. What do they say? Round to the nearest tenth of a unit. So this would be 0.6 kilometers. Excuse me. Any other questions? Okay. Here's your quiz help. Oh, yeah, Lauren.
Can you teach me how to do it on this calculator again?
Yeah. Pretty much anywhere you see like the trig function and an angle, those two things have to get switched. So you always do the angle and then the trig function on your calculator, but I'll walk you through it. If you want to just use my like normal one for the quiz, I'm fine with that. Would you feel more comfortable with that?
Probably.
Okay. Okay, quiz wise, real quick, because you're going to do this on your quiz and I would like it to go well. Okay, let's say I give you that triangle. If I say find the sine of A, what do you give me? 4/5, right? It's just a ratio. I feel like everyone's so used to solving for a missing thing now that they try to do funky things on this problem. If I say, give me the ratio for the sine of A, all you're giving me is opposite over hypotenuse, right? From A, this one's opposite, this one's the hypotenuse, so 4/5. This is your answer, okay? How do you solve for an angle measure? The inverse, yeah. So if you have this triangle, and I say solve for this when this is 8 and 10, right? You would use which trig function? That's sine because it's opposite and hypotenuse. So you would say the sine of the angle equals 8/10. And then how do you plug it into your calculator for that? Second sine. So you'll hit the second button, the sine button, and then 8 divided by 10, right? Second sine, 8 divided by 10, because this is what we're doing. The inverse sine of 8/10. Okay, 8.5 is the law of sines, okay? Law of sines. Any guesses what trig function you're going to use today? Sine, yep. Only sine, okay? You will not use cosine and you will not use tangent to do what I'm going to teach you how to do right now, okay? It's just the law of sines. It is always sine. It stays sine. Don't try to throw anything else into it. So what you'll notice when you look at this triangle is it's not a right triangle anymore, right? So far, everything we've done is with a right triangle. Now they're going to show us a new option. So maybe it's not a right triangle, but we're still trying to find a side length or we're trying to find an angle measure. There's still relationship between the side lengths and angle measures. So we're going to figure out what that relationship looks like and how you can apply it here. And honestly, so today we're going to do law of sines. The block day we're going to do law of cosines. I think you're going to probably think law of sines is significantly easier than law of cosines. That's historically how students tend to feel anyway. Hopefully that's the case still. So I think this one will be okay for you. It's a lot of proportion. And chapter 7, that's all we did, right? Was we set up proportions and we solved them. So it's going to feel familiar in that regard, that you're just cross multiplying a lot. But let me show you how this setup works. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that it's not terrible. Okay, so law of cosines, what they do is they give you a triangle where the capital letters are your angles and the lowercase letters are your side lengths, okay? And there is a relationship in this. So yes, you can read all of these words. Oh, just kidding. This is what the law of sine says. Basically, what all that is saying is there is this extended proportion that relates the sine of the angle to the side across from it. Okay, here's what it looks like. So if I take angle A, I'm going to say the sine of that angle over the side across from it. Okay, so lowercase a. The sine of A over A will equal, and now you move to the next one, the sine of B, any guesses? Over what? Over B, the side across from it. Okay, keep going. You can also say the sine of C over C. Okay, so here's the good news. The quiz that has this on it, I give you the formula. I think I actually am going to give it to you on the test too. I just won't tell you when to use it. But I'll give you, like, here's the law of sines. So the formula that I give you is just this. Never do you set it up so that you're solving multiple things at the same time. So I always just give you this as the formula. Sine A over A equals sine B over B. And you use that to set up your law of sines. Okay? Okay, so you need to know when to use the law of sines, because law of cosines you use in different scenarios, and that's what we'll do on the block day. So for law of sines, Nick.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this.
Okay, well,
Nine times.
don't lose me here. You want to get this. Law of sines shows up in 3 scenarios, and I will show you what they are. They're right here. Okay, AAS, ASA, and SSA. Basically what that is you use the law of sines when you know 2 angles and the length of a side, so that's these 2, or when 2 side lengths and the measure of the non-included, so not the angle between. So SAS doesn't work, but ASS or SSA, right, the donkey setup, that works, okay? So here's what we're gonna do. Example 1 here, it says, what is the length of MN? Okay, so MN is our X right here. We're looking for what is that length. Okay, now look at the information you've been given. You have an angle, and the side across from it is what we're solving for, right? So that's gonna be the sine of 125 over what? Over X, over the side across from it, equals, can anyone tell me what the other one's gonna be?
28,
Sine
sine 28.
28, so it's always the sine of the angle over the side across from it, 11.4. Okay, so that's gonna be your setup every single time. The sine of the angle over the side across from it. The sine of the angle over the side across from it, okay? So what we're gonna do now, do you see what we need to do to solve this? How do you solve for X? Cross multiply. So we're gonna cross multiply. So we get X times the sine of 28 equals, and here's where I highly, highly recommend you put this out in front of the sine 125. Otherwise, you got to really make sure you're doing parentheses well. So 11.4 times the sine of 125. Okay, do y'all have your calculators handy still? You just took a quiz with them, right? Oh, shoot, I should have had you keep them. Should have had you keep your, if you want a calculator back because you borrowed one, you're welcome to come grab it. Okay, so how we solve this, if I want to solve for X, I divide by the sine of 28 and divide by the sine of 28. So this is gone. Okay, so X equals, when you plug this in, this is super important, okay? Your calculator, when you plug in 11.4 and then hit the sine button, it starts a parenthesis here. At least all the ones that I know of do, okay? What you have to make sure of is you must put this one in. If you don't, you're gonna get the wrong answer, okay? So type in 11.4 sine 125 and then divided by a parenthesis, then divided by sine 28. And tell me what you get.
Do we have to complete the parenthesis on this 28 also?
No, the last one you don't have to.
19.9.
19.9. Are you getting 19.9? Hopefully. Okay, if you're not, talk to me. I will show you how to plug it in. So that comes out to 19.9. Questions on that? Okay, now I want you to look at example 2. What is the difference with example 2? Anyone see it? It's an angle, okay? So maybe you want to make a little note to yourself, okay? When you are solving for an angle, what are you using? every time when you solve for an angle.
Sin.
It's
So-
sine, but it's the inverse of it, right? Whenever you solve for an angle, you use the inverse of whatever trig function. Now we're doing law of sine, so it's going to be the inverse of sine, okay? Okay, so let's see if we can set this up as our proportion like we did right here, okay? Similar setup. How are we going to set that up for this problem? The sine of what? Okay, so we can say sine of x over what? Over what?
13.
Thank you. Over 13, okay, equals, then what? So if it's sine of x over 13, what's the other one going to be? Sine of 43 over 9. Okay, so it's the angle, the sine of the angle over the side across from it. Now we cross multiply. So when we cross multiply this, again, I would put the 9 out in front. So 9 times the sine of x equals 13 times the sine of 43. Okay, cross multiply. Okay, now here's where I feel like a lot of mistakes get made. It's 9 times the sine of x. The sine of x is representing a number. It's not that x is representing I mean, it is, but the sine of x is something, okay? So we don't just divide by 9 sine, because that doesn't make sense. Instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by dividing by 9, okay? And then you get the sine of x equals, and if you want to plug that in, you can. I'm going to show you how to plug it in on your calculator using a button that will just make your life a lot easier. Plug this into your calculator, okay? Are you with me? Plug in 13, sine, your calculator probably just started a parenthesis, then hit 43 and end your parenthesis, and then divided by 9, okay? Punch that in, 13 sine 43 divided by 9. What'd you get?
4.7.
Yeah, you've got the backwards one. It should be 0.9851-ish. Just here, take this back and just try it on here. And try to get one of those calculators. Okay, so if sine x equals this, okay, here's where your calculator is going to be super friendly to you. You're gonna take the inverse to solve for the angle, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say x equals the inverse sine of this number, okay? But you don't have to re-punch in the number because it's the last thing on your calculator. Do this. Go second sine, and then hit second, and then the negative button says answer. That takes your last answer that was on your screen. So it's taking the 0.98510 whatever, and then hit enter, and what do you get? 80.1. So x comes out to 80.1 degrees. Does that make sense? Do you ever use that feature? Second answer is huge. Like, it saves you so much time, and you don't accidentally plug in the wrong number or anything like that because they use the number that's on your screen. It's fantastic. Okay, questions on that? Okay, so refresh my memory. If you solve for an angle, you use what? The inverse, right? -1, okay? If you solve for a side length, don't use the inverse, okay? Okay, this last one. This is kind of a double problem. Here's what it says. A ship has been at sea longer than expected and has only enough fuel to safely sail another 42 miles. Port City Lighthouse and Covetown Lighthouse are 40 miles apart along the coast, okay? 40 miles apart. At sea, the captain can't determine distances by observation. The triangle formed by the lighthouses and the ship is shown. Can the ship sail safely to either lighthouse? So basically what we're saying is this distance going to be 42 miles or less? And is this distance gonna be 42 miles or less? Okay, so we're trying to figure out which one can he go to if either, okay? Or maybe both. Okay, so we need to know this length, we'll call that X, and we need to know that length, we'll call it Y. Okay, now I want you to think law of sines right now. Law of sine says an angle measure with the side across from it and an angle measure with the side across from it. Can we set up the law of sines right now with those two things? The answer is no. Do you know why not? We have two variables, right? There's nothing to solve for when you have two variables. So we need to be able to solve for something. Does anyone see a solution to that? Emily.
You subtract or add to find the other angle.
Right. Yes, brilliant. Okay, so call this angle right here angle Z. Well, I know that 70 and 52 and Z have to add up to 180, right? So if I take away that 122, I get Z is 58 degrees. Okay, so this angle right here is 58 degrees. Now you can set up the law of sines. You just have to set it up twice, okay? So set it up one time to solve for X, set it up another time to solve for Y, okay? So let's see if you can set it up for me. Sine of what? Where do you want to start? Let's solve for X first, okay? If we're going to solve for X right now, sine of what?
52.
Sine of 52 over what? The sine of 52 over X, right? That's the one we're trying to solve for, equals, what do you do for your other side then? Sine 70 over Y won't be solvable because we'll have an X and a Y. We just want one variable.
Sine 58 over 40.
That's the one. Sine 58 over 40. Sine 58 over 40. Okay, so now you're going to cross multiply that. So 40 sine 52 equals X sine 58. How do you solve that? What's your next step? Yeah, we're going to isolate the X by dividing by sine 58. Okay, and I want you to try to plug this into your calculator right now. 40 sine 52 divided by sine 58. If you don't put this parenthesis in, you will get the wrong answer. So make sure that you finish off that parenthesis. So 40 sine 52 parenthesis divided by sine 58, and you get what? Nick, that is not you focused on this lesson right now. You told me you were going to pay attention, remember?
Sorry.
I got
Mhm.
37.1.
Yeah, 37.
Doesn't it feel good to get the right answer now? Hooray for calculators that work. X comes out to, so if we round to the nearest tenth, 37.2 miles. Okay, so can the ship make it to Port City Lighthouse? Yes, right? As long as it's less than 42 miles, they will make it there. Okay, now let's check if they can make it to Covetown Lighthouse. And I'm going to do that one over here just to keep it separate. Okay, so the idea is the same. We're going to take the angle with the side across from it, right? So sine 70 over y should equal, and now you're going to use the same thing from the last one, sine 58 over 40. Okay, so cross multiply that. You get y sine 58 equals 40 sine 70. Okay, last step, divide by sine 58, divide by sine 58. So you're plugging this into your calculator, make sure you finish off your parenthesis. 40 sine 70 parenthesis divided by sine 58. What'd you get? 44.3. And this is miles. So can he make it to the Port City, Covetown Lighthouse?
Yes.
No, because it's 42 miles that he can go, and he will not make it 44 then. So that's a no. Okay? Questions on that? Do you get the setup? Sine of an angle over a side equals sine of an angle over a side. All right, that is 8.